Hello, and welcome to Authors Die Twice, a podcast on video games and aesthetic theory hosted by two living failures. In this episode, we continue our discussion about Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree. We begin by discussing the stone coffin fissure area in the DLC before moving on to questions of scale, repetition, artifice, and the vertical structure of the world design. We hope you enjoy the conversation.
Can we talk a little bit about things being too big? Because this is like goes back to my
Yeah,
thought of one of
sure.
my thoughts about the Fisher, the coffin Fisher, and that so that yeah, as I said, that's my favorite location. I mean, discovering it, I actually managed to discover it organically. Like I sort of put two and two together when I realized the seal was broken, and I could go back and check it, go through that golden
Yeah.
barrier.
Yeah.
And was just really blown away by the strangeness of the site. This massive. It's really well lit too. Like it looks really, really good. Looks particularly good even for Elden Ring.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Noxtella area in the base game. It just looks phenomenal. Just the art design and the lighting really pop there, um, in a way that makes the graphics look even better than they are in some ways.
Yeah.
But I would say, although I mean, it was maybe the only area in the whole DLC that like gave me a feeling, and I like I said, I had those feelings in the base game many times, and I felt a bit distant and a bit cold when playing the DLC, even though I did love playing through it. Um, I mean, it would be interesting to sort of for me to like try to unpack why I responded to the Fisher area. But this is all preamble to say like that said, I find like the enormous coffins in the Cerulean Coast area like just kind of silly, and there is there's a trend in Elden Ring for like a kind of giganticism that is
Yeah.
just become ridiculous. Like the dead dragon, is just so big it dwarfs every other aspect of this world. Um, and the ones that really bother me are the giant skull heads.
Yeah.
uh, you see in like Caelid. So it's just like you're like there's like a skull that's like bigger than any structure, in the game. It's like the size of a mountain basically, and there are a bunch of those.
Yeah.
Um, and they just look weird and goofy to me. Like, I think, if I can just sort of, I don't know, just sort of free associate about this.
Yeah, go
I
for it. Yeah.
there's a I think there's a reading here, and maybe it's even in the lore somewhere that I don't know, that these aren't actually the skulls of like primordial titanic beings, but more like growths. Like they're the lands between is actually it's like sprouting these formations that take the form of giant skulls, or even like giant coffins. I don't know, but the scale of these objects is so out of proportion to even the enormous entities that inhabit the game already that it creates a kind of dissonance that I find really unpleasant. I think the games in general are amazing with scale. Like the Souls games do scale better than almost any game. Um, like comparison, for instance, to like the new God of War games, the scale is pathetic. Like, like you're supposed to be in this huge battle, and it's like a hallway with a couple guys, and you're supposed to be traversing this enormous land, and you're really walking like a few blocks. It's probably because those games aren't allowed to break the camera. You can't cut. Their conceit is that the camera never cuts, so everything has to be perfectly continuous, and then it creates. I think it just leads to all kinds of problems of scale that I won't
Mhm.
get into. Um, and Elden Ring is amazing. The skyboxes are awesome. Like the vistas are incredible. They really feel big. And one thing that From Software does with these big, massive areas or rooms or views is that, they do a good job animating the distant objects. So that there's always some motion. It doesn't look really static. Like you can see the fire moving and billowing in the distance. You can see the lightning. You can see even dragons flying around or whatever. Um, and even when you're standing like really, really far away in the map, you can see enemies, which is not always the case in open world games. So that stuff is all handled great, but these like truly humongous objects, just feel like I don't even know what the intention is behind them.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Partly, one thing I would say is that the if there were like one or a few giant skulls or one or a few like big, X, Y, or Z, whatever it is, it would be fine. But like a whole assortment of them, I agree about that. It just becomes another, whether it's another race or another category or whatever. I mean, I guess that's what it is. It becomes another whole just category, which we could quickly assimilate to our playing style or our thinking about the game, right?
That's
Uh,
exactly right. I think, I mean, not to, sorry to cut you off, but just, yeah, I completely agree that if there were one enormous coffin, it would be awesome. And if there were like one enormous skull, like Skull Mountain, that would be cool too. I mean, they have that they kind of have that in like in Zelda, for instance. But
yeah.
it's precisely this kind of open world, like copy paste recursion of the same asset or same idea that dilutes it and just makes it feel weird and stupid. And that's just how open worlds tend to work. Like in Dark Souls, if this were Dark Souls, there really would only be one giant coffin.
Yeah,
Um,
just like there's one dead end hallway near the Witch of Izalith or whatever,
exactly.
If there are a
And
million dead,
the one that really gets me is that there are like two of those giant corpses in a giant throne. Do you know what I'm talking about?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Like the when you find the first one, it's awesome, and then you find another one, and you're like, why are there two of this same giant guy in a chair?
Giant corpse and friend of giant corpse.
Yeah.
Um, no, but something like that, and like one or a few makes it still able to remain something singular, but when we have a bunch of them, it feels like it's odd, and this is like a moment where I don't often think about like the, developers of a game, but it's a moment where it seems like or feels like the developers of the game are trying to engineer, this is like maybe the bad faith argument or something, but it feels like they're trying to engineer some kind of response out of me where it's like, oh, you didn't see that first one? Well, here's 10 more giant, coffins or whatever,
There are so many huge I mean, the coffins are massive too in that
Yeah.
area. They're yeah.
Um, but yeah, maybe this is like a totally other thought, and maybe we can, this is maybe something we can just kind of uh, ramble about a little bit. But I had a moment when I was playing and I was looking up for whatever reason in the game at the sky, and I realized that the game has a lot to do with like strands. I don't know if
Mm,
that makes any sense at all. I mean, so there are like those kind of moments in the game where you see there are those statues where if you interact with them, they kind of like show you the path toward the Erdtree or something, right? Like in
right.
the base game. And then there are, when you look at the map and the sites of grace, the some of the sites of grace seem to point you toward, or they point you in a certain direction, so there's a directionality to it. But then if you look at the sky at certain points, it seems like there's a veil or like some kind of strand, like large folding kind of strand just up in the sky.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
really cool effect in the DLC. I don't know what the reason or the explanation is that for that either, but it is really striking, the sort of like curtains or whatever in the sky around the shadow tree.
yeah, and I think that, I mean, I think that in the DLC, that's something that I think, I mean, of course, like the base game is just as beautiful, but I think that's something that in particular, like seeing that, looking up while I was playing and seeing that last night was pretty amazing and seemed to really like stand out among the other things that I was doing. Because again, as I guess like what I'll say about my recent gameplay is that as amazing and as fun as it is to just like play, and even if I'm detective style tracking down places I haven't been yet and just like kind of like studiously going and figuring out how to get there. Um, it still always like is a dead end, like there's still always just kind of, which inevitably it will be, right? I will inevitably finish it, and then therefore it becomes a dead end once I've deadened it by finishing it. Um, but there are still these moments. I mean, I think the game does give us these kind of like opportunities to like, partly because there's like a day-night cycle, and there are like weather events and things like that, and also there's just like the sky. I mean, partly, and maybe because it's just totally uninteractable. There's still this kind of backdrop of something we can't just immediately go and make part of the lore, I guess, maybe is my initial reaction to that. I don't know what you
Like
think.
the sky is this kind of like radical element that you can't assimilate into some like system of meaning,
Yeah,
you know?
I guess so. Yeah, which where it seems like literally everything else in the game seems designed, and this is like my allergy to lore, right? Like that everything in the game, like, oh, well, this is the skeleton of this race, and this is some trinket that belonged to this type of people, and and this whatever, like this area is on fire all the time because of this, or this area is always, poison because it sucks, or because there's some boss that is like of a poison guy who lives underneath it or something. Like the sky doesn't
Right.
feel like it has that kind of yeah, we don't, there's no kind of like uh explanation for it.
Right. And now I'm thinking of like, Michael Clune's book Game Life, where I think it ends with him talking about the color of the sky. I actually forget what the context is, even though I remember thinking it was a really beautiful ending.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, it almost feels like you're saying like the sky precisely because you can't go into it like in the way that you can in Grand Theft Auto, for example.
Yeah.
Um, like is the most real thing about the game, which is kind of beautiful in that it like in the expansion, that curtain in the sky, like it sort of suggests like precisely artifice, like it suggests a stage curtain or something. It
Yeah,
suggests
sure.
that you're in this kind of pocket world and this stage world, or almost like a little artificial globe, that has these beautiful like gossamer um, uh, uh, curtains or threads hanging above it, like a little Christmas ornament or something. And and yet it's like precisely the kind of inexplicability of that and the non-interactability, and yeah, and therefore the enigmaticness of that detail that makes it feel real.
Yeah, I mean, not to get this is like a totally, I'm gonna say this and I mean it in a totally non-theological way, but I've been reading with my students some essays by Annie Dillard, who talks a lot about like nature and spirituality. And I'm just mentioning this because it feels like a relevant, I
Mm.
guess, connection, where she talks about God and about how the world feels and like she uses this story from the Bible to kind of explain, like where these people heard God's thunder and saw the lightning, and asked Moses to go tell God to like leave them alone, basically. And she uses that as like a moment where now in the modern day, I mean, I think she was writing in the 80s, but she's basically says like today we don't hear anything anymore from nature. And her, whatever her argument, it's a kind of a simple argument, but it's basically that we know more and more about nature, but we don't hear it anymore. Like we don't have the like almost as if by explaining it so much, we know less about it or something, or like we're able to experience less of it or something. And there's certainly like a more vulgar way, I guess, to put that argument that uh, that I'm sure everyone's heard. But I guess that's kind of what I mean. Like even if, I guess my point is that even if like the sky does seem to portend some kind of artificiality in Elden Ring, right? Like the fact that that artificiality is not explained uh,
Right.
points us back maybe to like the original, or like an older understanding of myth or something, for instance, right? Like myth was real when we didn't start like trying to contextualize it by having this like secular alternative that therefore was more scientific or more like whatever, right? Like more advanced, quote unquote.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's almost like you're saying the sky, the soundless sky is what allows us to listen to nature, in Elden Ring. And
Yeah, sure.
it,
Yeah.
it makes me think of like just a really cool detail about the game that I saw in a YouTube video. I think it was either the Skill Up review of Elden Ring or the Joseph Anderson review of Elden Ring. Both are great. I mean, I love Joseph Anderson's work in particular. He's so good. But they one of them mentioned that you can see places where in the base game where the land is sort of eroding, that there is this kind of stone structure beneath it, almost as if it's really like Halo, like it's like a terraformed artificial world, which of course it is an artificial world, but that within the established fiction of Elden Ring,
Yeah.
um, the natural landscape is kind of plopped on top of the bones of something completely artificial. Um, a kind of a stone structure or edifice. This is particularly visible in Lingrave, where if you like walk to the edge, where there's like waterfalls falling off into the ocean, you can just see where the water is like wearing away the soil or the rock, and there is this like deeper layer of bone, which is just like stone or building.
Yeah.
Um, and that is a current in Elden Ring that's just never explained. Like there are gods, there's the greater will, there are the demigods, there are these, the Elden Beast, but none of these are the creators of the lands between, so there is the sense that there's like a higher power or something, or just some even deeper history of this land itself, of the physical space and the physical structures, that totally supersedes all of the narrative content and mythos that we're exposed to in the game. So there's like an excess that is provocative. And again, like these giant stone coffins or the enormous skulls, like none of those are all, I think, operating on the same wavelength. They're all sort of some mythic element even beyond the myths that we understand and explore in the storyline of the base game and the DLC.
Right,
And
right.
so
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I respect the intention. I love the intention. If that is the intention with the enormous, the colossal heads. Um, I just think it's used too much,
Yeah.
where it stops being effective.
Well, and it's also like not necessary, right? Or it's not necessarily necessary.
But the
Uh,
curtains are the same. Yeah, I mean, I'm just realizing now I'm getting excited because like the curtains are the same thing. It's like they're so huge relative to the scale of the Land of Shadow that it's like what being would use or could fabricate, a pun intended, I guess, such curtains. Um, like curtains that cover the entire sky. It is like the appropriate scale in relationship to those enormous skulls or enormous coffins,
yeah,
uh,
sure.
but yeah, it's just so much more effective in that case.
Yeah, because well, yeah, and we don't and maybe it's something that we won't know, ever. Like we won't get an answer for that. I mean, again, it's like I keep oddly, I guess I just keep coming back to that like a dead end hallway thing in Dark Souls because something about that is I don't know, ominous in like not like a horror sense, but just ominous in an odd sense where I guess we just like won't know, right? Like I think even
Yeah,
there's
it's like the
like
of
there's
death.
no way to recuperate that into the lore, right? Like there's something, and I hope that Elden Ring will still, leave however, whatever ends up happening with the game or, any other uh any any other developments in the DLC or anything like that. Just hopefully there will be room to leave things unexplored, right? So they're actually still explorable in a single playthrough rather than being written, ahead of time or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean it just I again am thinking of like Roland Barthes' notion of the pensive text.
Mm.
The idea that I mean for him it's kind of like a deceptive ideology of realist literature, but it can also be, I think, seen more productively as just a way of generating a kind of silence and thoughtful power of a work. For Bart, that effect is totally illusory, but it's achieved quite effectively through, um, yeah, just the insinuation that there's more that's not said. And this characterizes the way that endings often work in realistic novels, that there's more that's not said, literalized in the example that he's examining, in the fact that like this character seems like she's about to speak and then she just remains silent and the story ends there. And it's almost like, for a video game or for a Souls game, the an analog would be there should always be a door that you can't open, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
like in Bloodborne, there's that one door that's clearly like just an oversight, but there's something powerful in the notion of there's going to be one door, just one, that remains forever locked and literalizes the idea of a reserve, of or a remainder of meaning or thought, or narrative uh, that almost needs to be implied in order for the work to feel complete or something. Precisely by asserting the incompletion of what you yourself got to experience, that the world of this game or the thought of this, the meaning of this literary work exceeds what we ourselves are able to traverse or read, or explore.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think maybe we should circle back to that because that feels like um a pretty I know what you're saying. I think there's like more paradoxes at play there. But
Mhm.
maybe I actually like maybe this is connected and we can talk about this and then maybe come back to that. So one thing I was also thinking about in my quest to to keep exploring the DLC, I guess, was how in the base game there are these on the map, right? There are like the two levels of the map, right?
Yeah.
So there are like these two levels, and in each case, it's basically an whatever underground portion of the map is like kind of underlaying the regular map. And in each case, it's like a watery, like a river or something or a well or whatever. It's like a kind of underground, sort of aquatic sort of section of the map. Whereas the DLC does not have that and yet seems to have like even more stackedness or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I wonder, like, if we're thinking, because I do think it's worth like thinking about the DLC as like partly, yeah, an extension, but also like maybe a kind of development or like it's iterating on some of what was already happening, like map wise and gameplay wise and whatever in the base game. Like I wonder what this flattening of the map. I mean, we know what it does to us as players. It disorients us. We like, whatever. We'll find if you play through the game, the DLC one time and just kind of look at the map, you might say, "Oh, well, I found everything." And then you go online and you look at a map of the sites of grace and you see how there are like a ton more that you haven't seen.
Mhm.
Even some that ostensibly are in the middle of the water, like that's like
Right.
the Garden of Deep Purple one, for example, is just like way out into like what seems to be an ocean. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I was really only starting to think about this last night, but I've been curious about that. What do you think is like happening with this? I don't know, this cartographical shift, right? Because if they followed, right, if the developers followed what was happening in the base game, then we would have like several maybe levels uh,
Right.
of map, at least two, right? Maybe even three. I guess it would depend, but
Yeah, no, and the lack of that makes the map, as has been pointed out often, I think, pretty useless in Shadow of the Erdtree. I mean,
yeah.
it's useful in its own way, but like you basically can't tell how to get from A to B by looking at the map because the map doesn't account for the different levels of yeah, of overhanging even. Like there's that whole section of the map, the Rao ruins, I think, something like that. That um, it it's just like that whole area is underneath it is concealed by this larger ruin that's like the top level of the Erdtree map. But you can go all underneath it in the base of the ruins, and that actually is like one of the first areas you can explore, or one of the most natural areas to find early on in the game. I mean, I just love that aspect of the map. I think exploring the overworld was by far my favorite part of the DLC. And on release, I think a lot of reviewers and commentators just pointed out that it is borrowing a lot from the Dark Souls 1 level design, which
Mhm.
they'd kind of gone away from. That sort of corkscrew, incredibly vertical, stacked
Yeah,
design of
yeah,
the world, which is again, I mean, I even the first time I played Dark Souls, like that was I was blown away by that. I mean, I think I described it to friends, not even knowing Souls commentary or anything about the game. I was like, one really cool thing about this game is that it is an open world game that is vertical rather than horizontal. Like you explore it by going up and down the ladder, not by going out across the fields at any point.
right.
And finding different paths, to skip floors or get one from one floor to another. And that's exactly what's happening with the world map in Erdtree. I still felt at times that the individual components of the map felt barren, that there could have been more to do or just more to see in any individual level. But the way they relate to each other is really, really cool.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I would actually maybe say like what you just kind of suggested that actually maybe the most exciting thing about the DLC is how the different parts of the map relate, rather than any one particular portion of the map. But I mean, I think I might also, even though I love many of the places in the base game, I might also have said that about the base game as well. Like I'm more excited by thinking or conceiving of like how this entire uh, map all fits together. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I guess that's like
Yeah.
a tricky question to maybe try to answer, but
I'm realizing too that like one thing I think I didn't get the same feeling of emptiness and or like insignificance to the environments in the base game.
mhm.
I think that's with the knowledge that Shadow of the Erdtree I think is a lot denser in a lot of ways and more intricately connected. And when you do find a catacomb, it's really curated and unique and has a cool mechanic. And some of those dungeons, minor dungeons, are huge, like the pot ones that go on forever and they look like Dark Souls 1 dungeons, like you're just like on these rickety bridges going deeper and deeper underground. They're awesome.
Yeah.
So the quality of the content is much higher. And there's like the fragments, the Scadutree fragments that are always fun to find, or the permanent upgrades. But I do feel like there's this basic sense of the world being stripped of value, or like already strip mined of value.
Mhm.
And that's as simple as, I mean, the point is really simple. Like I think in when traversing the overworld in the base game, you're leveling up, you're working on a build. Sometimes every level you get feels significant because you're reaching thresholds to achieve certain, equipment requirements or spell requirements for your character. And so like killing enemies, finding just like random souls or runes, all that stuff feels fun. It's like, it's a video game. You're collecting resources and the world is a kind of receptacle or canvas for resources. And resources are just so much less meaningful in Shadow of the Erdtree because you've already played the game for like 100 hours and you're pretty
Yeah.
maxed out.
Yeah.
Your build is basically complete. Like you might find a new sword that's a little bit better. You might find a spell that's a little bit better. Um, but you're not going to be radically changing your build, or rather, you're never forced to. And there is a kind of stasis that sets in where it's just simply not exciting to get like a lump of souls in the way that it would be. I mean, like I love in Elden Ring in the base game, like those those caves with all the ants, like the giant ants,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is like they're pretty copy pasted. There's nothing extraordinary about them. There's a bunch of them in the game, but they always give you so many runes that I'm always psyched to find them. It's just like a gold mine of leveling up. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to level like 3 levels here just by clearing this one room full of ants.
Right.
And you just don't get that feeling in Shadow of the Erdtree, so it's like the threshold for what is relevant and exciting in terms of rewards is just way, way higher given the point you are at the game and how powerful you already are. Um,
Yeah.
and of course, we're getting the Scadutree fragments, but those are just the same thing, There, it's like, oh, I think there's like 40 of them, so it's like, okay, I got Scadutree fragment number 25. It's not, it just doesn't feel quite the same.
Yeah. Well,
That lends its. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, it's as your leveling scales, like we would have to imagine finding like a million runes or something like that rather
Right.
than 30,000, which is
Which would honestly be dope. Like if there was like an altar where you get 1 million runes, that would be honestly really cool. Like it would be this unique thing, that happens nowhere else in the game. It's kind of like that one altar where you get like 5 Shadow Tree fragments. That
yeah,
just
yeah,
feels, it's like this random. It's like the boss isn't even that hard, and you kind of walk over, and then it's more dictated not by the difficulty of the challenge, but by the location because it's right by the Shadow Tree.
right,
Um, which I love that. I love that it's more organically placed, as a reward than sort of mechanically placed based on challenge.
right, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like the space of the map, I do want to talk about it a little more, like in terms of how, because I think we've skillfully like avoided uh still any kind of like lore discussion here, other than like talking about like the fact that there is lore in the first place. And I think like the map thing, I feel like has an kind of an interesting relationship to the lore, right? Like so the map, I mean, beyond even asking like who who made this map, or like what relationship does this map have to like the actual world building of the game itself is one thing, but but the this world that we are in that is like somehow, again, we get into it from, I forget what the boss is that you kill in the base game, and then you can just enter into the DLC.
Vogue,
Rogue,
the
yeah, yeah, that's
Lord
right.
of Blood.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it feels like a bizarre, it almost, I wonder, it almost kind of like my relationship playing it, it feels to me, and I know that it's not, but it feels to me kind of like actually this term has come into my head as I've been playing, like the hunter's dream in
Mm.
Bloodborne, like how you have and I just read your draft of the piece that we kind of alluded to last time about the kind of repetition within this game. And it almost, in a way, it feels like the base game becomes like a hub where you go into the TLC or something, as if like there's you're in the dream and then you go into the nightmare, or you go into the other kind of portion here. Um,
Yeah.
Whatever. This is like speculative, and I'm kind of totally rambling, I guess. But I don't know. The map seems linked to that because that's like the way that you do that in the first place, right? Like when you navigate between the two, you have to just constantly be like clicking whatever button to.
R1. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. No, go ahead.
no, no, I don't know. I think I'm just like kind of wondering about it because I think it's
Yeah,
interesting.
I never thought about the question. I mean, it's such an like obvious, silly, in a way, silly question because it goes without saying, like the map is there because it's a game and it needs a map. But like, there is this kind of lore in a way, or narrative justification, or something, narrative intention that we have these markers that where there's some tablet, and then we grab a rare item there and get a map piece. Why are the maps fragmented? Who illustrated these maps? I mean, the fact that it's not a digital, a kind of like graphical render, but a supposedly hand-drawn map with weird little flourishes, like this little people boating out in the ocean. Like the maps have these little figures that are
Yeah.
it's just like these little touches of individuality, that does raise a question. It's kind of a cool question of the origin of the map. I mean, one last thing about, I mean, this is not really to your question, but just thinking of the relationship between the two maps, between the base game and the DLC, it does make me think of um, Outer Wilds, which is a game I feel like I've recommended that to you before, but yeah, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
the piece that I wrote about it, but that's an incredible game. And one thing that's really cool about the DLC is they take your most basic tool from the original from the base game, which is a little like translator screen. So in the base game, you're encountering all this alien text, and you progress through the game and solve the mystery by translating on your screen the this alien spiral script. And in the DLC, it's quite similar to Elden Ring, where they added, or the Souls games, where they added this new area seamlessly into the main game that you still sort of enter, you kind of cross a threshold and enter it as a separate space. And
Yeah.
the rules are a little bit different, even though it is assimilated to the larger world.
Mhm.
But like as soon as you arrive in this other space of the DLC, you find more alien script and you like take out your translator and the translator just says cannot read. Like you can't it doesn't know the script because it's so old and so alien. And you might think like, oh, they're later on in the game, I'll like find the secret key that lets me translate the script, but I'm pretty sure there is no way to translate the script. So the game is just telling you like your translator doesn't matter here, and there will be script that you'll never be able to read. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just such a cool evolution and complication of the normal of your routine, for the first 40 hours of your time with the game. And that it feels like that in Shadow of the Erdtree too. Like we're conditioned to try to find those damn map markers. And I was obsessed with finding the map markers in Erdtree, partly because it's so difficult. And yet the map is so useless for the most part that it's more just like a pure collector mentality. Like I just wanted the map complete for completionist's sake, and so I could look at the map as its own work of art in a way, so I could scroll through the map and just kind of admire it rather than use it. It becomes divorced from utility in a way. And so I'm chasing down the markers or the fragments just by habit. And I do love that. I think it's a brilliant inversion, or subversion of expectations.
Yeah, and I mean that goes. I guess this is also one thing I was thinking earlier about. Finding what is it, the Garden of Deep Purple or something. Um, because I'll never go back there, like I did that part. I mean, or I doubt I'll go back there. I guess we'll see. But I went there to find the site of grace purely as a completionist. I
Yeah.
don't, it's not convenient to find, and it's also doesn't give me any convenience for anything else. And I think Dark Souls, had a limited number of bonfires. I think Bloodborne by far has like a very limited number of, waypoints. But Elden Ring, they're just like proliferating everywhere, right? Like there are, and then the DLC too, the DLC still has, like certain areas of the map have so many sites of grace, like so
Yeah.
many, and they still do the thing where, you'll have like right outside of a boss fight, you'll have a site of grace, and then when you kill the boss, there's a new site of grace, which is
Right.
totally redundant, right? I mean, there's no reason to to do, right? Like, there's nothing you don't ever.
Yeah, no, it's emblematic. I mean, of the kind of again, like the sort of excess of this game. Like in
Yeah,
Bloodborne and Dark Souls 1 in particular, like the bonfires and lanterns are placed so strategically, where it's like everything loops back in each level to the single bonfire that you have, or at most two. Um, and it feels like they're placed with such purpose, whereas here they're just kind of plopped willy-nilly, based more on your own actions. Like beating, I mean, one thing is like beating a boss, and there are so many bosses, always gives you a site of grace, and that's often why you'll have them like just right next to each other.
yeah,
To the point where it's like, why was it? I do wonder, just, I mean, without having given it any thought, like why was it necessary to put a site of grace at every boss arena? Particularly because, like, yeah, as is usually the case, there's very little reason to return to a boss arena once you've beaten the boss, you know. There are sometimes quests related to boss arenas, but those are by far the exception. Um, so yeah, like it just sort of it's occurring to me now that it's a design question that I need to think more about.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder because it maybe brings us back to the question too of I mean, because those sites of grace are, after all, like findable through the map, so they become something different from the bonfires in Dark Souls, for example, or even whatever the waypoints, or I forget what they're called, but in Bloodborne, like you can access them. Yeah, the lanterns through you can access them through those grave things in the Hunter's Dream, but then that's it. It's not like you can just travel, bring up your map and travel between them. You have to go back to the dream and then you go warp to a different one.
Yeah.
But here there are like these weird, it almost reminds me of the when you're a kid. I don't know if you ever had one of these, but those things where uh, I had this because my grandfather worked for a bank for years, but he would give me these like it was like a cardboard thing with the little cutouts where you could put different quarters of the different states into it. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so like that, like the New Hampshire quarter, the new,
Yeah.
Vermont quarter or something. It just feels like these bond or whatever these sites of grace are already like there and visible on the map, and then just they become visible once you actually touch them or reach them or whatever, and then
And they do look like little co gold coins too.
they do, yeah, they do. So it's like so that I think maybe like if we are like maybe gesturing towards some kind of map maker, which oddly means that we're participating, however perversely in the lore, I guess. Damn it. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it's going to become a lore. This is actually going to become a lore podcast.
yeah. No, I think it's a relevant question though, and it's funny because so much of what's actually compelling about the game is our no, like as we were saying last time, like our individual experiences playing the game, like our meaning like everybody's individual experiences playing the game, but also of course we can't divorce that too much from the not necessarily the lore, but like the mechanics that are kind of like infected by the lore or even by just like this kind of yeah, maybe haunted by like the question of lore at every turn,
Mm.
like because you're right, like I have my screen is kind of pulled up and just sitting at the map right now, looking at the base game map, and it's just these clouds that, you know, it looks like a 1700s depiction of clouds, like surrounding the map, which is totally lopsided and warped and looks realistic in that sense, right? Like it's hewn out of these. There are plenty of untraversable places, and then within the places that are traversable, there's this dense collection of coins, as we said. Uh, and yet there are these like bizarre, like mythological things about the map, right? Like the Erdtree, like there are these things that seem like weird emblems of like what we'll actually encounter there, and same thing with the DLC, like the whole top of the map is this like straight ahead like drawing of I guess the Scadutree.
Yeah, and I do lo again, like I love that that is just a drawing. Like it takes up a
Yeah,
huge part of the map, and it's just an illustration for
it's
its
great.
function is purely aesthetic. It has no practical gameplay significance whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like it's amazing, and it does like again show us this like older style of and of course this is like a fantasy game, right? Like uh it is like making us think about those older kind of
Hmm.
aesthetics of navigating the world and things like that. And
Yeah.
I don't know, this is still going to be a question for me, I guess. Like, I wonder what it's trying to make us think or understand about what it might have been like to be in that world, you know?
Yeah. Which is a question that is I feel is not always asked or posed in a real way by Souls games.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
like some of them are so blatantly artificial that there's almost no sign of actual like an actual human life world, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And I want to say that's sort of true of Elden Ring as well, even though Elden Ring, like uniquely among all these games, has like birds and animals who actually like have lives, you know, in this world. Uh, but there is a sense of like fullness, I guess, in other respects in Elden Ring. And you know, there's even like a town, there's like the pot town where it's full of like sentient pots. And you can actually, it actually feels a little bit like an inhabit. It's like the one town that's not deserted in a Souls game, you know, where you can go in and actually talk to people. Um, that Elden Ring does have a little bit more of that um, rounded out, like a sense of a world that's inhabited, like actually inhabited. Um, I think Bloodborne is the one that poses it again, not to sort of always return to that game, but it's the one that feels the most like a world, you know, like a lived world, despite all its craziness. And that's just partly a function of the setting and the sort of time period and the fact that there are NPCs like coughing inside the houses or whatever. Like when you walk by a house and there's actually people in the fiction of Bloodborne, there were people living in all those houses, you know, whereas in most of these games, they've been deserted for hundreds of years. Um, but yeah, that's something to think about more too, is like how and when do these games ask the question of what it's actually like to live in them?
yeah. And narratively, you know, in a whatever like lore, less lore related narrative sense, that another thing I was thinking about in Bloodborne, is that, you know, yeah, you rarely come face to face with an NPC. Like, you have a handful of encounters through closed doors, or, you know, darkened windows, or whatever, or dimly lit windows. But there's that there's I was thinking about it because this is like a narrative dead end. There's the like little girl or whatever who
Oh yeah.
you knock on the window and she says, "Can you find my mummy?" or whatever, and you know, then you end up killing her father, who becomes like the, what is it, like a werewolf or something? It's a
Yeah,
mech.
he's like a werewolf creature.
Yeah, and you find
Or
the
no, he's kind of like a more like a giant ogre or something, right? I know who you're talking about. Father
yeah, yeah,
Gascoigne.
Gaston, yeah, yeah, and so you find the brooch thing, and then you bring it back to her and you give it to her, and then she just disappears. Like, that's the end of your like encounters, right? Like,
No,
she,
well, you know that's not the end, right?
oh, it's not. Oh
She
no.
kills herself. Yeah, it's really dark, I
Okay.
think. Yeah. You find her dead body like down at the bottom of that drop. If I'm
Oh,
remembering right. Yeah, there are a few more steps, but the point is basically the same. Like it is a dead end. Like the
yes. I mean, it's a literally a dead end.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, I think I have not found I so I didn't know that.
I forget how to trigger that. I think I had to look it up. Like most of these quest lines in Souls, I do like a third playthrough where I just look up everything and try to complete all the side quests because I want to see all the content.
Yeah, yeah. Um, anyway, I mean, and so I guess my point there, or my either whatever is true, right? Either way, I guess the point is the same, which is that that is like a quite realistic like way of conceiving of whatever timeline or time period we're supposed to be thinking about. That is a very realistic way of like thinking about human interactions, you know?
Yeah.
And
That
same
they're that
same
they
is
go that they go nowhere. Is that what you're saying?
well that no, well, not necessarily, you know, but that we don't have like always this kind of, you know, reminder like, hey, so and so is in this town, make
All
sure you.
right. Yeah.
So there's the you know, heads up, the HUD version of that that we don't have. That's one thing, but also the fact that it may bear no fruit. You know, like it doesn't. I'm not pessimistically saying that every human interaction goes nowhere. Obviously not. But we do need to, and this is the thing, I do think that, like, the Souls games, as much as we like to say that they're difficult and they want to punish us, whatever, I do think that they're like asking us to exercise a bit more of our own, like, memory and other faculties when we're playing them. It's not
Definitely.
it's not just like, oh, these are hard games. They could be harder. We've beat them. Plenty of people have beat the games, and we get the learning curve, and we're able to handle it, and play New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus and whatever, right? So, like, clearly they're not impossible games. But what they are asking us to do that I think is like more difficult is fit all of like this information in our heads, and
Mm.
remember, oh, this guy mentioned Saint Trina, so now I have to like somehow figure out who that is, where that is, jump down a big hole and find Saint Trina. Not only do I do that, I have to beat this boss, and then I have to go through the little cave. I find Saint Trina, I guess, but then I just keep imbibing nectar and dying. Uh, right? Like, so if you get to Saint Trina, like, there's, you try to talk to her, she says nothing, and then it's just the option is imbibe nectar. You just die, and you die. I think after you die 4 times, you start getting like the screen will stay black, and then she'll like have some dialogue.
Yeah.
Like, that's so uh it's so oblique, but it is related, but it's related in a way where it feels to me, I mean, it does feel novelistic, I guess. I mean,
Mm.
you know, I think another question that we're implicitly also asking is about like how literary these games are.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, do you think that's a good stopping point? Like we've circled back to Saint Trina and
Sure.
posed, it's the great question for a future conversation, I think. Things specifically about the literariness of these games that are so um, minimalistic when it comes to storytelling, like as everybody knows. They still have a way of seeming more literary in that sense than the talkiest game or the game where you're just like reading constantly, like Disco Elysium or other games, RPGs, The Witcher, where there's just like reams and reams and reams of dialogue. The silence of these games is like partly what makes them authentically literary.
Yeah, they're minimalistic, but there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's like a ton going on. They're minimalistic, but they're incredibly complex in a way that I'm not sure I've encountered it in another game. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think we can stop here and continue
Sounds
forward.
good.